Fox College football analyst Joel Klatt joins us each week courtesy of MyBookie.ag. Code next round to get a 300% deposit bonus for use in their casino. You can bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie.ag. Use code next round to get a 300% deposit bonus in the casino and 50 free spins. MyBookie.ag, code next round. What is up, Klatt? How are you today?
Good, man. How are you guys? What's going on?
Doing fantastic. What a wild game you got to see Saturday. Wild.
Yeah. I mean, everything from lack of offense to pepper spray. I mean, it was everywhere.
You know,
Did we ever find out, because I worry about this all the time, because I don't know the jurisdiction, because I live in the South where we've always had Alabama state troopers traveling all over the country with the Alabama and Auburn coaches. So I don't know
It's Michigan police officers with Michigan.
Right. So
with the Michigan team, and it's Ohio State police officers. It's like it's the same officers. I see them. They travel around with the team.
I just was it a local, somebody that actually had jurisdiction with the pepper spray
on the field? I'm not totally sure.
Yeah. That was my fear.
I believe that it was a mixture of both, like OSU PD, Columbus PD, and some Michigan police officers as well. I believe that, but I don't know exactly who sprayed or anything like that. But that was a wild scene and unfortunate. That was an unfortunate.
Yeah, look,
scene.
bad luck. But like, I don't know how you feel, but if somebody tries to, I don't care if I just lost. If somebody tries to plant their flag on my logo, it ain't happening. And I know it sounds stupid, but it's almost like if you're Sharon Moore, hey, look, let's win and let's get the hell out of there. We've won, 3 in a row or 4 in a row, whatever the number is now. We don't need to plant the flag. There's got to be something done on that, because you're going to get confrontation every time somebody does that.
Yeah. So I think that this is a touchy subject. And here's why. Like, college football is the most unique sport in the world because it's more tribal and more in the blood than any sport in the world. No fan. I don't care how many generations you've been rooting for a professional team. There is not one fan on the planet that can say, I am an Atlanta Falcon, Miami Dolphin, Denver Bronco, right? Like, you just can't say that. You can say, like, I love the Dolphins. I love the Broncos. Even European soccer, right? Same thing. Even as tribal as that is and as crazy as that is. But in college football, all of us, our identity rests in those places. We feel like those places made us who we are. We went there. We are Buffs. I am a Buffalo. There are people. I am a Buckeye. I am a Wolverine. And then that tribalism makes the emotions higher and ratchet it up. It's a less corporate environment than the NFL. And that's why we love it. And so it's more emotional. And in these rivalries, and by the way, this was not unique to Ohio State, Michigan. This was all over the country. All over the country, right? And what I'm trying to say is that you cannot separate what we love about the sport from then the emotions of when the emotional red line starts to overheat. You can't separate it. I can't tell you, like, I love college football for all of these reasons, and then sit back and say to myself, like, but this is too far. No. Like, it's part and parcel because of the emotions. I'm not trying to give a pass to all the actions. It was ugly. I wish that we wouldn't have that. Seeing pepper spray out there, that's not what we want to see. Having said that, like, I can't lay fault on either side. Maybe we should just, like, not have pitchforks and flags and everything out there. But Texas planted a flag in the Michigan 50-yard line and nothing happened. But when it comes to the emotions of a rivalry like this, you're going to get these types of confrontations. Maybe we should just, like, maybe authorities should just circle the logos after every rivalry game. I don't know. Like, I don't know what the fix is, but I'm just trying to tell you, like, I'm not going to sit here and chastise guys for doing exactly what I would have done.
Yeah.
I know how it feels, guys. Like, I've lost to my rival at home. I've beaten my rival on the road. I don't know. Does that make sense?
No, it does 100%. I want to hats off to you guys. It was fascinating television. And I thought the minimal talking that you two did during the broadcast, during that part of it, just watching it unfold and saying just really point on comments and then letting it play out a little bit more and letting it play out a little bit more and then saying something and then, Gus being, Gus about it and you being you about it. I just thought I was just drawn in, mouth open.
Agape, you could say.
Agape. Yeah. I almost said agape and I didn't know if it was the right word or not. But I was just sitting there just amazed at watching the scene. And it was just really good television. And then the great cameraman and the great director, producer punch up the head coach of Ohio State who said, "What happened?" And I thought that just summed up the whole day for Ryan Day.
I was just going to say, it wasn't just about the scene at that point. It's like that encapsulated the last 3.5 hours.
Yes. He's lost. He was lost. What happened?
It was the look on his face. When y'all punched it up, I told the guys this earlier. I had an Iron Bowl party, and there were like 10 or 12 people already there in my basement. The minute the shot came up, there was an audible reaction from, I think, everybody in my basement. Just the look on his face, Klatt. I don't know how to describe the look that was on Ryan Day's face at that moment. It was
shock. I think shock.
Yeah. I mean, it was a beat down human being is what it was.
He looked like he had been lost all day with the game plan that they came in with, which I don't understand. And then he's lost at what's going on.
That's an interesting conversation is the game plan.
Yeah. Tell me about that because they have great receivers and great running backs on the edges and can catch the ball out of the backfield. And I think they ran it 22 times between the tackle into the best unit Michigan has. I don't understand that.
I've been trying to figure that out, and I don't think that there's a good answer. So let's start with that. The game plan was incorrect. There's no defending what Ohio State did on the offensive side. There's only possible explanations. So I did this on my show. It's like Michigan was allowed to play on their terms again. And I say allowed purposefully because Ohio State made the decision to play Michigan's game, which is wild in my estimation. And so the biggest mismatch that Michigan had was their defensive line against the patchwork offensive line of Ohio State. And yet Ohio State allowed those four to exploit their mismatch while not taking advantage of the biggest mismatch that the Buckeyes had, which was their wide receivers over the patchwork defensive back secondary of Michigan. We saw it one series. In that 2-minute situation, they started going up tempo. They started running through zones and bringing guys underneath, and they went right down the field and scored a touchdown, which is why at halftime, and our guys in our studio did this. It was all kind of like, okay, well, now they figured them out and they're going to come out in the second half and it's going to get rolling, right? So it leaves me with this. I honestly kept thinking about this all day Sunday and I talked about it on my show. Why? Why in the world, did that happen in the second half? And here's my only possible explanation. I believe that Ryan and Chip, when it's 10-10 in the third quarter, believed deep down that one score was going to win the game because of two reasons. One is I don't think they had a lot of trust in their quarterback with the way that he played in the first half. And I think that they had an immense amount of faith in their defense against what was going on Michigan's offensive side. The only reason Michigan had 10 points at that point was they got first and goal inside the 5, then got a short punt, in plus territory, gained 5 yards and kicked a 50-plus yard field goal. So I believe that Ryan and Chip thought to themselves, let's protect our quarterback, which might not have been right health-wise, clearly wasn't seeing it even before he got hit by Makari Page. The first interception was really bad, and they're going through that second half in kind of this mode of like, hey, listen, a field goal probably wins this thing. And at that point, I think that they're just trying to get through the game. That's my only explanation. I'm not saying that that's right, by the way. That's just the only explanation I can have for why in the world, you come out and the first 2 plays in the second half are run plays in the middle. They had 2 different situations in the third quarter, guys, with, let's see, I've got it written down here. 6:22 in the third quarter. They had 1st and 10 at the 19-yard line in the red zone. Third quarter, 4:01. they started possession at the 16-yard line, 1st and 10. So 2 different times in the third quarter, they've got 1st and 10 inside the red zone. Inside the red zone. One of those ends in interception, which was really bad. Throws it 3 yards behind Emeka Ibuka. It further, I think, beats the point home into those coaches like, our quarterback ain't got it today, guys. We ain't got it. So now they get 1st and 10 at the 16 in their next series after Davis Warren throws a bad pick. And I believe he thought to himself right there, we're in field goal range. We're with the wind. A field goal wins it. And that's how Chip called that series. Chip called that series 1st and 10 from the 16 with 4 minutes to go in the third quarter, as if a field goal was going to win the game. That's the only explanation I can have. And by the way, after that interception, with about 6 minutes to go in the third, Ohio State ran 10 offensive plays in the last 20 minutes of that game. That's staggering, guys. And all of that. And by the way, you could talk for an hour about all the things that Michigan did and some of the players that played so well. Mason Graham was incredible. You guys should have seen the film. Oh my gosh. They were able to just sit back with 2 safeties, drop 7 into coverage, and Ohio State had 5-on-4, 6-on-4 in the run game, couldn't run for a yard. Mason was taking double teams and just throwing them out of there, making tackles. Kenneth Grant was incredible. The linebackers were fantastic. And then, and this is where I'll end on this long rant about this game. In the end, it comes down to this fourth quarter issue. And early in the week, I'm talking with Kirk Campbell, the OC at Michigan, and Sharon, and they had this like grin on their face, and they were like, all we dream about is a one-score game in the fourth. And I was like, in what world do you win a one-score game? Like, what? What? What's going on? And they said, we don't know if we'll be in a one-score game, but in the event we are, we're going to win. And I'm like, oh, okay. You got it. And then they did. And after that pick, guys, in the third quarter, and after the missed field goal, I think back to that conversation, and I'm seeing the reaction on the opposite side of the field from the Michigan folks, and then I'm realizing, like, they know that their body blows are about to pay dividends. Check this out. I gave this stat on my show. In the last 4 fourth quarters against Ohio State, they've run the football for over 390 yards and 6.7 a carry. They just know it's going to work. Like, they will eventually succeed, even with that offense. And what ended up happening? The most successful offensive series that Michigan had was in the fourth quarter, just doing what they had done all game long, running the football with Kalel Mullings, who was a beast. It's not like he had a giant day, but man, I think it was 28 carries of just body blow after body blow after body blow, and then it's one missed tackle. They're in field goal range. Zvada hits it, and the game's over. And I just was like, man, they knew it. They knew that in the fourth quarter, they were going to be the better team, the tougher team. And they knew that because that's what past history had taught them. And they were confident in that. Man, it was wild.
So 12-team playoff. This is going to get fun. And we've got an Auburn fan on staff, and he said it last Monday. He was like, Alabama's going to find a way to this college football playoff. I don't know how they're going to do it, but they're going to find a way. And their odds went from 80-1 to 18-1 over the weekend after some of these upsets did happen. So we were talking about this, Klatt. If SMU wins, it's obvious Clemson's out. Then it comes down to Alabama, South Carolina, and Ole Miss. If Clemson beats...
Maybe Miami. Maybe. I'm not suggesting that they would win that argument, but maybe they're involved in that conversation.
And Clemson winning over SMU makes it a little more difficult because then you get a 2-loss team coming out of the ACC championship game. How do you think it unfolds, and how should it unfold?
Okay. You laid that out perfectly. In the event SMU wins, I don't think that, I know this is going to sound crazy because of how they play. I don't think that South Carolina gets a shot because of the head-to-heads. Like, this committee has just honored head-to-head. They just have. So because of that, I think South Carolina falls by the wayside. Even if you think that they're playing better football than the other two right now, and you might be right, I think it goes by the wayside. And then you have this conversation between Alabama and Ole Miss, and I think Alabama wins that argument. They also have shown that they will honor brands and the past, as well as head to head. So I think that Alabama would win that argument. Now, who do I think should win that argument? That's a tougher discussion. I think that Ole Miss was better against Georgia than Alabama was. And that loss to Oklahoma was so bad. I mean, so bad. And the loss to Kentucky was so bad. I don't know, guys. I don't think that there is a good option. And this is where I'll come down on this, is that I'm glad that we're arguing between really flawed teams versus like Georgia one loss in the SEC championship game getting left out last year, and a team that we all think like, yeah, they definitely could have won a national championship. I just don't feel like that's the case with the teams that we're arguing with between, Alabama and Ole Miss. But I guess I could be wrong. I think Alabama is going to get the nod as long as SMU wins. Who do I think should go? I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess Alabama, because I hate the politicking from Lane.
Okay,
Yeah.
but if Clemson wins and then SMU's got that second loss, I mean, again, it comes to the brand. SMU right now has 0 top 25 wins. Alabama has 3. I mean, if it comes down to SMU 2 losses, Alabama 3 losses, where do you think the committee goes?
Can I surprise Klatt, give him my opinion first? I think
Sure.
SMU wins, Alabama's in. Clemson wins, Alabama's out, SMU stays in. I think SMU is in the playoffs.
I think so, and I think that the reason would be this idea that you shouldn't be penalized for making your conference championship game, which I agree with, by the way. That's why, like, Georgia's in. I don't care if they lose their third game or not. I would agree with that, although, like, boy, you're gonna have a lot of people yelling and screaming about that in terms of who would be favored in the game, who played a more difficult schedule, and Alabama wouldn't be wrong in that case. But this idea of not being penalized for making your game, you can't tell SMU you would have been better off not playing for a conference championship. That's the problem from a philosophy standpoint. I do think that our model is a bit flawed. I think a better model would be 14. And then we would be having play-in games for all of the automatic spots. I do think that we're going to go to a 14-team model with 2 byes, probably by 26. I think the SEC and the Big Ten will get 4 automatic spots. I believe the ACC and the Big 12 will get 2 automatic spots. And I think that the way that they'll get to those automatics is that we'll have basically like conference play-in weekend this weekend. So, for instance, like 1 versus 2 for the championship and the right to have a bye in the Big Ten and the SEC, and then 3 versus 6 and 4 versus 5 in play-in games. I think that model is coming, and I think it would probably be better.
Joel Klatt.
Wow. Real quickly. That's like breaking news. So 3 versus 6, and the other one was 4 versus 5? And they would be playing games, so I could be third and lose that game and be out?
Yeah, like Tennessee is locked in right now, but now playing that game, they lose, they're out.
Could be.
Wow.
Could be. Or there's still at large spots, a spot or 2, so you could still sneak in. But it would further incentivize the regular season, I think, and it would create the greatest weekend of college football that we've ever known. You'd have 3 play-in games in the SEC, 3 play-in games in the Big Ten. You'd have 2 play-in games in the ACC and the Big 12 because 1 would play 4 and 2 would play 3. And all of those would be like in-conference playoffs. And then we would get to the 14. You'd have 2 byes. You can reseed after the first round. And I think that's probably coming. And by the way, that also produces more valuable inventory. Anytime you're thinking about a change in the structure of college football, the postseason in college football, or any of that, you have to understand, like, well, is there more money to be made And in that case, there absolutely is, because you're adding inventory. And at this point, it would be highly valuable inventory because they would be so substantial.
I'm sold.
I am too.
I mean, like this weekend, Brown brought it up. I mean, how many games?
Well, you got 9 conference championship games that are all 4 points or less in the point spread at mybookie.ag.
Yeah, so
that's a good weekend.
Yeah, I mean, that excites me a little bit,
Yeah.
but
But
I
if you
mean,
put
that
a lot
would be
on the
over
line,
the top if
yeah.
we had that.
Yeah, then you would add, all these other games. Ohio State would have to play again, this next weekend, and they'd be hosting. I don't even know the standings off the top of my head.
Yeah, well,
Who is it, Minnesota.
In the SEC, it would be Georgia, Texas for the championship, and then by last week's rankings, it would be South Carolina at Tennessee, Ole Miss at Alabama.
Great, I'm in. Like, sign me freaking up all day long. Let's go.
I'm with you. I don't hate that at all.
And then nobody can gripe.
Yeah,
at that
you
point,
really
right?
can't.
Yeah, I'm with you. I love that idea.
God, I wish you were commissioner.
Hey, so
Yeah.
Klatt, they were talking earlier that nobody plays hypotheticals on this committee. And, hypotheticals, as Brown said earlier, they can be dangerous. But at the same time, I think you got to be logical. Like if Alabama played SMU, I know it's a weird year, but back to the point spread, in Dallas, I think Alabama would be about a 7-point favorite. In Tuscaloosa, about 10. They're probably a 4-point favorite. They're probably like a 8-9 point favorite on a neutral site. If they're not playing hypotheticals, they actually played a hypothetical last year with Florida State, did they not?
They had a couple of games to see them without the quarterback, but
They still won the games.
That was a tough loss. You're assuming that Alabama would beat SMU. I think Jennings would run wild on Alabama's defense.
SMU's better than Oklahoma.
That's why that was my point. Like my point to him on the hypotheticals was if I had told you going into Saturday, Ohio State and Michigan play 10 times, you would have told me Ohio State wins all 10.
Well,
not you,
and
Lance.
just for the sake of like safety, you would say like maybe there's 1 out of 10 times that this Michigan team has like this narrow path. It just so happened that narrow path happened. Would Alabama beat Oklahoma more than 5 out of 10 times? Probably. Do they lose that badly 1 out of 10 times? Yes, but it happened. That's why I just. That's a hard one for me. I get it. It happened with Florida State. I do think what's becoming really difficult is, and we're seeing this play out, guys, is like the Big Ten and the SEC are just so much tougher week in and week out than the other conferences. And what you're getting here is the lack of balance within conference schedules is what's really at play here. And I'll go back to this, and we talk about throw out like fixes and ways that this sport can be better. I'm a firm believer that within the conference, you should play schedules based on strength in terms of like where you finished the previous year, very similar to the NFL. So, for instance, next year, if I was a commissioner of the SEC, Georgia and Texas would play the 2 most difficult schedules in the conference, and then so on. Ohio State and Penn State would play Oregon and Penn State would play the 2 most difficult schedules in the conference versus this lottery that we have now where Florida and Oklahoma have no shot. Georgia has an absolute grizzly bear to wrestle and other teams don't. And, there's going to have to be a solution at some point.
So I want to ask you on Penn State and see if you can follow my logic here, Klatt. James Franklin is historically awful in these games, and he's already shown us one this year. Awful. And follow my logic. The ones he's been awful in are the ones that he knows way ahead of time he's got to play. This one kind of snuck up on him, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, might that actually play into James Franklin's favor? They're like, oh crap,
you bet.
we got to prepare for Oregon. Yeah.
And it's like they've got absolutely nothing to lose. If they lose to Oregon, everyone's going to be like, okay,
I knew it was coming.
That's fine.
Yep.
So why not go take a giant swing at this thing? Get creative, get Tyler Warren the football. And it's so fascinating to me because they were pointing at that Ohio State game all year, and it's the most conservative and poor game plan that they had. Ohio State pointed at Michigan all year, and it was the most conservative and poor game plan that they had. If you go back to like the USC game for Penn State, man, they were firing on all cylinders, and Warren's getting the ball all over the place, and Aller's making plays on fourth down late. It's so fascinating how that happens when a team feels like they don't have the pressure, or it hasn't been a buildup, of 365 days. So I think it could play to their advantage. The problem is that Oregon's just very good. They're fast. They're physical. Quarterback plays really well. We'll see how that one comes out. I'm going to pick Oregon. I think that you would have to, right?
Yeah. I mean, the logic says yes. When I look at James Franklin in these games, I just wondered if one that sneaks up on him might help him a little bit than the one he knows is coming.
It might.
Yeah.
It's a good point.
Hey, and by the way, for all of our beliefs that my conference is better than your conference, I thought the Texas Tech coach was fantastic, pointing out that a Pac-12 team's about to win the Big Ten, a Big 12 team's about to win the SEC, and an American conference team's about to win the ACC. Insanity.
Last year the Pac-12 was great. What if Arizona State goes to the Big 12 and wins? Oregon goes to the Big 10 and wins, and it's like we banged on the Pac-12 for like 8 straight years, and then they're just gonna like exert their dominance. That's great.
Hey, Klatt, I asked these guys earlier. It seems like Quinn Ewers at Texas. We'll see what happens during the playoff, but it seems like his time's up there after this season. It seems like Jalen Milroe's time's up in Tuscaloosa. If you were advising those guys, they're not going to be first-round guys. Would you advise them to come back and make millions and transfer out somewhere else, or would you advise them to go into the NFL draft?
Yes, it is a veteran. It is a veteran-driven quarterback sport now, and that's who's going to be up for Heisman trophies. That's who's going to be playing for the national championships. And they were veterans this year, and maybe they do that, and I'm not sure, but. Quinn, I think, believes deep down that he could be a top 10, 15 pick in the National Football League, and he's not going to be this year. I don't imagine, with the way things have gone. And so there's no doubt there's going to be a market. Every coach that I talk to is thinking to themselves about the transfer portal in terms of a veteran quarterback. Who is the next Brosmer for Minnesota, or Rourke at Indiana, or Dylan Gabriel at Oregon? All of these guys. For the last couple of years, college football has been run by veteran transfer quarterbacks. And so in a lot of ways, Milroe and by the way, remember, you're going to have revenue share next year. So there's a chance that they could get NIL packages for 1 year upwards of between $3 and $5 million with their experience level. So, I mean, it's a fascinating question. There's no doubt. If you're Shedeur or Cam Ward and you're going to be in the top 5, you go, obviously. But I think Milroe would have a lot of suitors, guys. A lot of suitors would be looking at Jalen Milroe and Quinn Ewers, for that matter.
Pete Thamel reporting Miller Moss is hitting the portal, so he'll be in there as well. That's
Miller Moss. Yeah. He'll be a hot commodity. Say what you want about Miller, but like you put him with the right supporting cast, and who knows?
All right, he is Joel Klatt. You'll see him on the Big Ten Championship. Am I right about that? Jim did not do me a sheet.
CBS.
CBS has that one? Yeah. So you're off this weekend?
Yep.
Hey, good for you.
My bad, guys.
That's
Sorry,
right.
Klatt.
That's all right.
Well, finally,
my club has this event called the Ho Ho Ho,
yeah.
and I've never gotten to play in it, so I'm gonna play in my club's Ho 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 event.
Well,
I'm hoping it's a Christmas-based tournament.
Oh, is it a Christmas tournament?
I'm canceling. All right. Well, good luck at the Ho Ho Ho.
Yeah.
I'm glad, Brad.
You're welcome.
I'm glad Brad and Gary are finally getting a good game. They have had a crap schedule this year. Brad and Gary have disappeared. Like, I was watching them Saturday thinking they were at the Iron Bowl this time last year. But anyway.
Yeah, I had a buddy over, and he's like, "Oh, this is the first time I've heard Gary all year." And I'm like, "I've had him 4 times watching USC."
Yeah.
At least they're getting a good game. All right, Klatt, enjoy the ho-ho, man. Always fun talking with you. See ya.
See you guys. Have a good one.
You too. Klatt with us, courtesy of MyBookie.ag. Code next round when you sign on at MyBookie.ag. 300% bonus on your initial deposit that you can use right there in the casino at MyBookie.ag. Code next round. MyBookie.ag. Code next round.